All right, this video is going to show you how to find the percent meeting certain benchmarks and organize that into a table and ultimately make some pictures with it. So already at the bottom here, we've got some templates of suggestions from our Section 2 suggestions, like the Murray State benchmark of college algebra being 21 and college calculus being 26. There are, of course, a bunch of other classes here listed that you could consider. So starting with the Murray State College Algebra Ready, it'd be nice to know how many are ready for college algebra because many need it. So you go up to the top, highlight a bunch of the data, then over to the bottom right, it's calculating either sum or average or one of these, and you want it to be count, so change it to count, and then go back to the top again and start letting it count how many people made a 21 or higher. So it looks like there were 50 that did that, and if you keep going to the bottom of this data, there were 132 total people. So you could grab your calculator and type in 50 divided by 132 and get the decimal 0.3787, and then round it to a percent, which will be 37.9%. Or you can let Google Sheet be the calculator by hitting equals 50 divided by 132, and then change the decimal to a percent. 2 decimals is a little bit overwhelming when you have 12 or 13 pieces of data, so I'm going to suggest 1 decimal. So click that button right there to change it to 1 decimal, and then proceed to do that, collect it for every class. So I'll just do one more. The number of 21s in the next class, it says in the bottom right-hand corner, was 47, and that was out of 103 people. So again, you can use your calculator or equals 47 out of 103. Let this be the calculator, and then change it to percent and 1 decimal. So you can keep collecting that data. The 26s and above, as a separate table, would be just go back and count how many made 26. Looks like 18 made it out of, again, the 132. So 18 out of 132. Either on your calculator or using equals 18 divided by 132. Change it to percent, 1 decimal, and again, you could collect all that data, right? You also may want to consider putting the data that you've collected right here, copy and paste right here. This data that you've collected, copy and paste right here. Of course, they'll all be full with data, and then you could create a comparative bar graph comparing the meeting college algebra mark versus the meeting college calculus mark. I'll show that in a minute. I've got all these down here with fake data that we'll look at in just a minute. Then there's one more thing I wanted to show you. The college algebra data that you've already collected, again, you can copy it and paste it down here and compare it to those who did not meet it. So I wanted to show you a little formula here. You can take your calculator again in your hand and say 100% minus 37.9 and get 62.1 and type 62.1% in here. Okay, and then you want to change it to 1 decimal. The other option would be this. You already should have all these numbers right here. All these numbers will be filled out. So you can just use a formula to fill them in by typing in equals 100% or just 1, that's 100%, minus this number. Click the box 37.9 and it automatically subtracts it. Then you can copy this, Control-C or right-click copy, and paste it here. And then, of course, if this had a number in it, which it will if you collected the data, when you copy this formula and paste it here, it'll subtract, and then you'll have a met versus not meet list of data to make a picture with. So again, that's collecting the data, putting it into tables. There's a lot of other tables you can create. Again, there's a 19 mark just to get into college. You must have a 19 just to get in restriction-free. So you might want to look at those that made a 19 or above. What percent did that? And maybe you look at what percent didn't do that and make a comparative graph. There's college business calculus, there's college statistics, there's old remedial classes. So there's a lot of options here for you to consider. But let's look at some pictures now. Again, these are fake numbers. I just made them up so we could make some pictures. So this is about as basic as you can get. Highlight the data and insert a chart, because you only have one piece of data on this picture, and that one piece of data is college algebra. Of course, you'd want to change it to have data labels. So in the series, you want to click data labels, 2 points right there. You probably would want to look at changing the y-axis again to a minimum value of, like, say 40%. Now, watch what happens when you put 40 in. What happened? That's not, because this works in decimals. 40% is the decimal 0.4. So you'll need to set the lower at 0.4, which is really 40%. And then your table automatically knows that 0.4 is a percent, 40%. So the maximum you probably want to have what it already has, 0.8, which is fine. Now the reason I say that is you can clearly kind of see that if this were the data, that it looks like just about, with the exception of 2010, the scores were kind of going up till 2013, and then all of a sudden they started just kind of going down for the last 7 or 8 years, or 6, 7 years. So it would be important to see this data and be able to communicate that. If that's what you're seeing, then that's going to develop or start turning into a thesis. So, but anyways, that's a basic simple graph. Let's get rid of that one. There's another basic simple graph you can make right here with the college calculus class. In fact, let me don't delete that other one. Let me just move this aside. There's another graph that we can make that's just simple with the college calculus group right here, because we've made this table by inserting a chart, putting its data labels on it. Probably don't have to change the y-axis on this one, because there's only a little bit of dead space there, and you can clearly see what's happening here. So I would kind of start to think, all right, well, I wonder how that compares. I would start to kind of think about my thesis here. Get this picture over here, and see how hard it is even to get these pictures side by side. It'd be better if they were on the same picture in the first place, which we'll do in just a second. But you can kind of see, all right, if the percent of students is going down, but the college calculus, the best scores on the ACT are going up every year, pretty much at a constant rate, that would explain why, if you were seeing the averages go up, why it was happening. This type of picture would indicate that the reason you're seeing your averages go up, class averages that is, not percents, class averages go up, is because the people who make the highest scores, there's just more people making the highest scores. And it looks like less people are making the middle scores. So in other words, more people at the top are benefiting, not necessarily at the middle or the lower. So anyways, this is the kind of stuff we're getting into later. That's way too much for the first video, but it'd be better if we didn't have these two graphs as separate graphs in the first place. So let's get rid of them. And if we had just copied this data into one picture or one table, then we would be able to see both of these things on the same picture as soon as we insert this table here with data labels. We would be able to see the same trends that we just mentioned. Got to get data labels on both of them. Probably would need to change the axis to start at like 0.1 maybe. We'll see if that'll work. That might be too low. Yeah, it looks like it might be okay. And then the highest to be like 0.8. Yeah, that would work. So we could see a little bit better that we're missing some data labels, so we're probably going to have to change this to 0.9 to get those data labels there. Yeah. But we can kind of see the calculus group is going pretty straight up. I mean, it's almost tripled. But while that's happened, it started to benefit the college ready, college algebra ready, but then it kind of started to decline here. So again, this would tell you something that we'll talk about later, but it'd be nice to just have them on one picture. So there's a lot of other combinations that you could put in these tables here. I'm trying to get it to delete for me. There we go. There's all kinds of combinations of tables you could create, and the section 2 has all kinds of options for that. You just have to collect the data and organize it into tables to make pictures. Okay. So last thing, the formula that I mentioned before equals 100% minus 65.1. I have to change that to a percent, 1 decimal. I could copy that formula with copy, paste, or this one I didn't show earlier, but you could just grab this little box and slide it over, and it automatically copies the formula for you. Formatting, I like to have boxes and centered. It doesn't really matter, but it's just, I like to have everything all nice and together. I like to have these right justified for some reason, but it's just a preference thing. If you need tables around, if you need boxes around this table, you just click right here and add borders all around it. But anyways, now that we have this data of met versus not, we'll make a picture and see what it looks like. That's pretty telling already. Just looking at that picture, it's pretty telling. So let's add some data labels to the red, add some data labels to the blue. Okay, might want to change our title a little bit, but you might be all right with it. This story is telling a lot. The blue's bigger than the red until you get to about, well, until you get to the last couple years. But you're also seeing that more people were ready, and it started to decline to the point where it's almost 50-50. But this comparative graph is kind of powerful to say, well, in 2013, there was way more people ready than not. And that same information was on another picture right here when we just did the Algebra Ready right here picture, but it wasn't quite as powerful as comparing it to meet versus not, meet versus, and anyway, it's just an option for comparative graphs. If you want to change the style of the graph, double click on it, set up. You've got chart types that you can play with if you wanted to make them line graphs. Plenty of options to play with up here to make it your own. So anyways, I believe that concludes the percent meeting video, about 12 minutes long, not too bad. Remember, you've got all these options to use. I will probably record one more video. I've already recorded an average video and a percent meet video now. I'll probably create one more of the creative type video, and that should give you plenty to work from.